Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to make a little video about a walkthrough of the War in the Old World campaign. This is the map we're going to set up with 6 hypothetical factions, and it's going to provide some context and background for an upcoming miniatures battle report for Warhammer 3rd Edition. So you can see the armies laid out and the starting lands for each army, and you basically have 3 good, 3 evil factions, although they don't have to align that way. Each faction is given an indicator of, the armies have an indicator of how many experience points and how many points are in the army. Remember, you can have 750 points plus whatever your experience is, maximum army size. So these are beginning warlords with no experience, so they're maxed out at 750 points. They're eager to get out and fight. The gold is determined at the end of each turn. At the beginning of the game, you get none. The more land you control, the more gold you get, but you also get a D6 worth of gold every turn. Here's the first turn, factions moving around, and we'll go into a little explanation to see what they're up to. The markers, red indicates moves, yellows indicate support moves, white arrows indicate canceled moves. The battle markers and the moves determine the type of battle. So up here, the Dark Elf force marched by sea to move into Troll Country. Troll Country is the extremely valuable land that gives you an advantage in purchasing monsters. The Middenheimers moved into the Middle Mountains rather tentatively, marching towards what could be the focal point of this action. Up here, the Chaos player was just bloodthirsty and just force march across the pass into Prague, where he was met by the troops from Kislev. So there will be a battle there. The Chaos will be -1 leadership because they forced marched before the battle and they're fatigued. Down here, the Goblins tried to force the pass, as they've done probably countless times in the past, and the Dwarves were there to meet them. At lower points, sometimes Dwarves have a bit of a problem and Goblins have an advantage because you can get a lot of Goblins for 750 points. You don't get many Dwarves. So let's see how this pans out. We're going to dice these preliminary battles. Down here, the Goblins eke out a minor victory and drive the Dwarves backwards. The Dwarves retreat back towards the woods there because they don't want to allow the Goblins to burst through and take over the rear and flank of the Empire troops. So their homeland is protected to a certain degree by intrinsic forces. The battle in Prague goes in favor of Chaos. They win a minor victory, driving the Kislevs back to their homeland, and they're now stationed in that particular position. Now, when you win a game, you gain experience, but when you lose a battle, you also gain experience, but you lose points. Winners don't lose any points, so you have to determine what you want to do next. And this represents a little bit of a conundrum because the Chaos troops can spend a turn reinforcing up to their maximum points. Remember, they got experience, so they can have 750 plus their experience, or they can drive on. A lot of times you have to kind of pick and choose what you want to do. Do you want to keep attacking or not? So this is the ending position for all the different factions. Some troops have experience, some troops have taken losses. No one's been able to take any reinforcements because it was just the first turn of the game. However, everyone's going to get some gold, which is based on, like I said, your starting territory. The Dark Elves have a territory 1, so they're going to get +1 to the die roll. This is the gold after turn 1. You can use that to hire mercenaries, to reinforce your armies that took damage. You can also use it to buy new armies. And one of the things you can do is buy a small faction and send it forward to reinforce your existing army rather than stall and advance. This represents the turn 2 moves. There's a lot of peculiar things that are demonstrated in this, and we'll go through it and show you what the strategic implications you can do with the strategic map that will impact the tactical battles, and I think it adds a little bit of depth. Up here, the Dark Elves spent their gold to purchase a reinforcing army, so they now have 2 armies. This army is rather small, but it can be combined later on with their other army once it gains experience points. So it can also cut off retreats. Down here, the Goblins decide to pursue and continue attacking and harry the Dwarves, but the Dwarves reinforced, so they now have a larger force, and they're on the defensive. So they gained experience from the previous battle. They didn't move, they just reinforced. The Goblins just kept driving forward. Up here, the Chaos and Dark Elves agreed to join forces and attack the troops in Kislev. This is, the Dark Elves were doing a supporting attack. Both armies would move in, and it would be a large battle. However, the troops in the Middle Mountains force marched across the river at Eringrad, catching the Dark Elves in the flank and stopping their support. So there will be a battle there between the Empire troops and the Dark Elves, and then the Empire troops and the Chaos, but it won't be one combined battle. This is the result of the battle. The Chaos troops were beaten and sent back to Prague by Kislev, and the Dark Elves very narrowly managed to fend off the fatigued humans coming up out of Eringrad. So that's the result of turn 2. Let's take a look at the current gold totals for each faction after a d6 die roll. The Goblin plundering was not as good this turn. They rolled a 1. Plus there were 2 for their controlled territories. The other factions did average. So each faction has a little bit of gold to play with. The Goblins less so, but they have a whole second army. These are the moves, and there were some interesting conundrums going on. There's a lot of free-flowing going on over the battlefield. Up here, the Chaos player just reinforced his defeated army and then purchased a new one to reinforce. So he's going to be stronger in the very near future once he combines those two, and he should be able to go smashing across the north. I think he's a little ticked at the Dark Elves. That alliance is over. Up here, the Dark Elves are going to send their reinforcing army down, and they're going to reinforce the army that they have, because that will push it over 1,000 points, and they'll take over the Troll Country. If they can end the turn with a 1,000-point army in Troll Country, they'll take it over and benefit from those advantages. Over here, the Middenheim Empire will build a new army and support the attack into the Troll Country. So they have a yellow support arrow. They're going to actually help out the other Empire faction over here, which builds a new army and launches an attack into the Troll Country. It's too valuable to allow the Dark Elves to have. That location is going to have to be fought over because you get half-price monsters. Down here, the Goblins are in a unique position because they have burst into the rear of the Empire, and that unit can run free, but they decided to harass the Dwarves again. They were having so much fun beating up the Dwarves that they attack them again, and then they force march their new recruitment army to attack also. So both Goblin armies bonsai into there. And this is the result of the resolution of the battles that took place. There wasn't a whole lot of battles, but this is the resolution of the moves and the battles, new armies created, etc. You'll notice that there are a couple places where there are 2 armies of the same faction at the end of the turn. That's not allowed. They will be combined, and I'll show you the results of what happens when you combine them. In the north, the Dark Elves were narrowly driven out of the Troll Country, so the Empire player takes that location, but he doesn't have 1,000 points, so he can't take over. The 2 Dark Elf armies are now in the same spot. They will be combined, and any excess is lost, so he loses 50 points. Down here, the Goblins were completely shattered, suffering a massacre at the hand of the Dwarves. So their confidence was a little bit out of place to continue pressing the attack. That was a battle over 1,000 points per side. The Dwarves had a slightly over 1,000, and the Goblins with 2 combined armies were up around, I don't know, 1,600 points or something like that. They were both sides were over 1,000, but they were completely shattered. The 2 armies are going to fall back there, and they're going to recombine, and they don't even have enough to get 1,000 points to take over that land. So this is the end result when you remove them. You'll notice that the Dark Elf, by combining the armies, has over 1,000 points in a 1-point land. They take over the northern wastes. They now have 2 territories that are marked as under control of the Dark Elves. That'll give them an extra income, and they now have a second location from which to create new armies. So it's important to expand your territory. Right now, everyone else is kind of hovering on the brink, and I'm going to show you that in a second. Here, the gold at the end of that turn, die rolls again. The Goblins get a little bit of a boost. They rolled well, so they got some gold, and they need it because their army is pulverized. This is the current strength and then maximum strength of each army on the map. So you can see the point of this campaign is to give you a wide variety of army strengths. In the case of the Dwarves and the Goblins, They have a lot of experience, so each of those armies could be much bigger, but they've been bloodied, so each of them are small. But that top number is the current strength, bottom number is the maximum strength for each army currently on the field in its location. So let's see where the next turn takes us. These are the moves that are placed for the various factions. The gold expenditures will be explained real shortly. It's an interesting turn, and this is what the entire purpose of this exercise was. Down here, the goblins and the dwarves both reinforce their armies to maximum size. They'll be butting heads again next turn, obviously, at about 15 to 1600 points per side. So that armies are growing exponentially. That's going to be a pretty intense battle coming up down there. In other moves, up here, the Chaos forced march their reinforcements across the pass, and they will be in a position to help out later on. Down here, the Middenheim force march their reinforcements across there. It's actually safe to force march if you're pretty sure you're not going to be attacked or be involved in battle. So it's a good idea to force march your reinforcements to the front where they're going to be seen. This is where the action's going to be, and this is where we're going to replay this on the tabletop with miniatures for the next video. So this was an exercise to try to create an interesting scenario, provide some context and some background to this. The Chaos are attacking the Troll lands. Empire is moving his reinforcing battalion up. He's got support from his buddy from Middenheim, and the Dark Elves are supporting. Again, I don't know why the Chaos is going to trust them this time. Those are the factions. You can see that we're going to have Chaos with Dark Elf allies. Both sides emptied their coffers for mercenaries, so there's going to be plenty of mercenaries on the table. But that'll give me an idea for the army list. Now I just got to go to Army Builder, go through my collection, get some miniatures. The terrain in the Troll Country is pretty much flat and barren, so it's going to be a pretty bleak battlefield. So, all right, there you go. I'll try to get the battle done and post that video next. Thanks for watching.